Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to MTA episode 41 for the 30th of November 2018. And the topics, probably just one or two, depending on how much we can fit into this episode, yeah. Basically, I want to talk about viability again. It came up again in the last video, and I just thought it's a good thing to maybe clarify what means viable to whom, right? Because it doesn't mean the same thing to everybody. And let's get that sweet. What is this? An ice trap? My eyes. Alright. Because it doesn't really mean the same thing to everybody, we've found, and obviously that was clear to some, not so clear to others, right? Jesus, this destroying my eyes, this ice trap, man, stupid hunters. It means the one thing for a few people, the other thing for I think a great many others. And the comment came in from Jamie S, actually, on the last MTA when we were talking about hybrid classes, right? And yeah, we had like a little going, back and forth on that video about hybrid classes and viability. And the thing is, he basically just started it off with, so also thanks for the input on that video. He said, all classes and specs should be viable, choice never equals bad. And I wanted to pick up on that one, especially because we were, that was what the video was about. Essentially, I was saying, look, there's a couple of classes, some work better than others. You can play a lot of things, just don't expect to, get into all the raids at the same time with a red spec that focuses on one hand specialization, right? So. Yeah, and then another dude said they are just not for raiding, and this pretty much reflected the whole problematic, or the whole issue there with what means viable, what is going on, and what is all these kind of things, because viable is a very subjective matter, and matter, not meta, right? And this means that a lot of people will have a lot of different opinions on this. To get this out of the way, at first, I would probably say that a lot of specs are, you can say they are completely viable for PvP, for example. There were a couple of things that we were talking about that were regarding PvP, for example, as a, I don't know, just look at a Moonkin, for example, right? Moonkin can be pretty obnoxious and very hard to kill in the PvP situation. I had to realize that myself with my warrior, and there's a lot of things that you could say, okay, this is more of a PvP spec, and that's where it's viable. That's what one camp of people says, basically. The other camp of people says it's never viable at all, because you should be just resto. You can heal yourself and moonfire down or whatever, right? Then there's another group that says everything's always viable, and you can also be a Moonkin in the raid. And here's the thing, right? You can already tell, because that one guy likes to play resto druid much more than anything else. He prefers to be resto in PvP and heal there and kill people with, out-sustaining them. While others might have a slightly different idea of what they want to do. And this is basically also already the thing that it boils down to, is you have a different opinion on how you want to play a character in an RPG. Let us first also get out of the way that this is still a role-playing game, right? This is an RPG. You're not playing League of Legends. Let's get that one right before we discuss anything about viability. Because people are talking about viability a whole bunch and a lot of the time, when they're acting like, look, I could get the argument of viability when you would be playing on a very high level of something very competitive. Like, I have no idea about Fortnite, how that kind of stuff works, okay? What I do know is, for example, League of Legends, you know, was or is a thing that, you know, I always try to talk with this Griffin Master because I've been an Alliance pleb for so long. Anytime I'm Horde, I'm stabbing this dwarf with my dagger and then I get killed. But yeah, anyway, I could understand people talking about viability when we were talking about, you know, the highest level, or even a somewhat above bronze and silver and, you know, end of gold level of League of Legends, where you could possibly say, okay, well, you know, this character or this champ is a little bit more viable, or this guy is just absolutely not viable at this moment, because I mean, look at if you've been playing League of Legends, look at Urgot for a long time, right? He was you could play him, sure, but it wasn't really anything. You wouldn't really come out pretty well in that regard, right? It wouldn't really do anything for you because it was such a undertuned champion, and I can understand that. You know, when people were talking about there's also kind of this kind of thing that you have a meta and you can buy items, right, to push your character into a different direction. And there were people that were trying to go away from, you know, the meta and play it a little bit different. And they would play an ADC in the top lane alone, and people would say, well, that's not viable, you can't play it. And I think this is exactly the problem with all of this kind of stuff, because one guy did it, right, that knew how that class worked in its essence and what he needed to push and how he needed to play it, really. And I think because he pulled it off, people would see, okay, you know, this is working out, Vayne top is a thing now, I can do it, he did it, right? It's just, I just need a little bit of practice. And sometimes that might be true, sometimes it's just, you gotta realize that, you know, this might be very much harder for you to pull off, and it might not be a thing. And this is what viable is. It's let's just say it's not really in the meta, right? Doesn't mean it's not viable, you can't play it. What I would say isn't viable, for example, for my understanding, and this could be very much different for you, for anybody else, you know, and for me, what is not viable is, for example, a shaman tank, right? Because, and here's why, because a prot paladin, for example, now look, I'm playing this is a very niche thing to play, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend that to anybody who just wants to have an easy time tanking at all. This is not the way to go. But what I do see is that a prot paladin has a lot of tools at its disposal that he can pull out of the bag that actually do the job in a different kind of niche that he fills, right? In an AoE tank niche, he's not a main tank necessarily. It's even harder to pull off, right? And there's people that will always argue, you know, red is top DPS. You can, that's your opinion, it's fine. For me, I'll always play a red in vanilla, but I know it's not a top 1 DPS. It's just not how it is, right? You can pull it off pretty good, but it's not a top 1 DPS. And so, like, for example, I would say Shaman is not is not viable as a tank because he doesn't have anything at his disposal. And I know Earthshock does a little bit more damage, and there's I think a weapon thingy that he can put on. It's Filthy Horde. It's an animal faction. I said it, right? I'm a Tauren, but okay. You can pull off a couple of things, and you could probably make that work somehow in a 5-man dungeon. But the thing is, you know, if you compare those to a prot paladin, has way more things. Excuse me, at his toolkit to make that work. Basically, he has increased threat in a baseline talent. That will just do anything you do in holy damage causes threat, and you can increase that. So basically, the more holy damage you do, the more threat you generate, And you have a lot of reactive stuff, which makes you very strong as a AoE tank, and you deal a lot of damage, you have a lot of threat on a lot of targets, and that's basically your niche. And you can actually judge, your auto attacks generate a lot of threat with the holy damage. On top of that, you have a AoE consecration below the ground, or on the ground, which anything that steps into it is gonna stick to you. And he has basically a buff that he brings to the raid. And he can, get crush immune and all the mathematical things, and challenges that tanks have to overcome to not get crushed in the face all the time. All these things make it pretty solid and doable, I feel, compared to whereas a shaman, he doesn't, for example, have anything to increase his block chance, which is a big factor if you know a little bit about tanking. Not being able to increase your block chance at all will leave you exposed to crushing blows the whole duration of the time, and that's just, of course, not what you want to have. So that is for me an example of what means viable and what doesn't mean viable. What doesn't mean viable, for example, is saying let's get away from the reds. It's just always at some point you hate it yourself, right? The whole discussion and all that kind of stuff. So let's get away from the red. Let's say you want to play, people, actually this is a good example, Feral. Okay, Feral on Nostarius was not as frequently played as here on Lightbringer or Northdale at all. And let me put this Arcanet bar here in the auction house. And Feral, before Nostarius even, you would really have to try hard to find 1, 2, 3 ferals on the server. Okay, that's how it was, really. And nowadays, look around, because people did it and people made it work somehow. It's absolutely fine to play, right? You can off tank, you have your own niche, you can DPS, you can just switch gear your DPS, not the best, but hunter level. You can get to hunter level, and you can switch gear again and you're an off tank, right? That brings a lot to the table. Same for a lot of other classes. So that doesn't mean it's unviable, because he doesn't top the meters. It's a hybrid class, he brings something else to the table. If you personally don't like playing these kinds of things, right, then you should play, I don't know, a Distro Warlock or a whatever, Fury Warrior, Mage. You can't really go wrong with that. Your only job is to DPS, of course you're going to be better at it. And that's fine. And sometimes I also have a feeling that people think that somebody's going to go and take away from them, something away from them, or tries to snatch their spot as a top 1 DPS or something, and the bad hybrids are coming now, and they're not gonna out DPS you anyway. I mean, if they do, then you should probably think about how you're playing your character, which has happened in the past a lot of times. I can just keep saying this all day. It's happened in the past anyway. So if we're talking about pure numbers, the numbers have been there, and but whatever. Let's look past that for now. And so that would be like a version of viable versus not viable. Like a melee priest is not viable, I would absolutely say, because it doesn't bring anything to the table. And we're not talking when we're talking about a feral or a rat. If he does his job right, we're talking about he's jumping, from maybe, depends on the guild. He can be anywhere. Technically speaking, he could be anywhere from even number 1 in DPS. He could be, depends on the guild, to the last place, or like 1 place above the main tank, right? That's the range we're talking about here. Anything could happen, depends on the player, the guild, a lot of factors. Excuse me. But when we're talking about, for example, a melee priest or whatever, we're talking about he would never even probably touch 1/10 of a main tank's damage ever, so that's unviable. If we're talking about a shaman compared to other tanks, we would be talking about him getting completely destroyed, and there's nothing he can do about it, right? Absolutely helpless and cannot really do anything about it. whereas other tanks have abilities to, when they gear right, to do it, right? They have mitigation they can pull off, right? As a prot Peli, you can still have options. If you need to push threat, you judge differently and all that kind of stuff. As a prot warrior, you can now there's going to be a lot of damage coming in. I'm going to be using trinket A and B, and I'm gonna keep the shield block up and not waste my rage on A or B, but I'm gonna try and see whatever I can do. For a feral tank, I'm gonna save my Puma rage for the frenzied regeneration, for example, right? That's what I'm gonna do when I know there's a lot of damage coming in. So those things, that's what we're talking here. For a lot of classes, also Moonkin, all that kind of stuff, we're talking about where are they going to be on a certain range, right? From left to right, from top to bottom. Are they going to be 2nd, 3rd, 5th, or are they going to be 15th? It doesn't matter really. They're on there and they're going to beat some people. It depends. They're playing with the others, right? Now, of course, if you have those kind of people that are below the main tank, but that doesn't necessarily have to be a red or a Moonkin at all. I've seen mages down there too. If you're something below, you should always do significantly more than a main tank, right? Or than a tank. Because otherwise you could very much ask, well, now in this case we could just bring a tank, have it a little bit more smooth and chill, and go that way, right? And so yeah, there's a, viable means a lot of different shit, to summarize this to a lot of people, and more often than not, it's more my opinion on what I want to play is A or B, opposed to this is viable and this is not viable. Because usually it's just an opinion. I like to play this, and I like to play that, and I like to play, I like to min-max everything, and if I want to deal the most damage in a raid environment, I would probably pick another class and not go with Moonkin. That's just his, this person's opinion of going all in and going min-maxing, playing the stuff that he likes, basically. And that's the same for me in a tanking regard, right? I wouldn't go I'm gonna be playing a prot Peli now as a main tank, whether you guys in my raid like it or not, because I know it's gonna as a main tank position, you need to be min-max and play the most efficient class for that. Aside from that, I like warrior anyway, but I wouldn't go and do that, because that would be a problem then. Also though, the whole discussion is viable and not viable, because also a lot of people still don't get that it's still an RPG. You can play whatever the hell you want. So as long as you find a guild that is willing to take you as a Moonkin or a Smite Priest, you can pull it off. Well, Smite Priest is maybe like a not so popular spec, because it actually does not bring very much to the table. You could probably be a Smite Priest spec and still be a very good healer, and that would be more useful. But as a Discipline Priest is a very good healer anyway, so that's absolutely viable. But you have the opportunity to help DPS on stuff that's absolutely on farm, and you just want to get through it quickly, so you have that extra potential. You could say every priest needs to be holy, that's the min-maxed version, while the other one is actually more efficient, or actually more meta than the holy priest. What are you gonna do? Heal everything to death on encounters that you've farmed and there's absolutely no damage coming in anymore? You could have invested those, instead of standing around as a healer having nothing to do, you could be a disciplined priest handing out a PI on your fattest warlock and smiting it up and get that encounter over with, and move on to the progress content. Again, you can play whatever the hell you want, just go and find a guild that accepts that and where everybody's cool with it, make sure everybody knows what you're up to, and if you find too many people in that guild are just can't handle the fact over years and years that somebody is playing a different spec than they are playing, and somebody's playing a different thing that they somebody likes different things, then you might find it easier to go into another guild, right? And that's absolutely fine. We're gonna be clearing shit very quickly, and we will have a one Moonkin that I know he's gonna pull stuff off. And nobody has to like that. I frankly don't give a shit about what people think. And if somebody thinks that Moonkin should definitely be replaced by another mage, and that guild sucks now and it's a scrub guild and it's bad and they're gonna struggle so hard, be my guest, raid with us one night, and if you still don't like it, and there's also people for them it's more important to get the raid over with 2 minutes earlier than to have somebody play what they like. And if that floats your boat, fine. I like to let people play what they like to a certain degree, unless until they actually perform, and they need to perform in a certain way. They don't need to be the top DPS as a Moonkin, obviously, but they need to be somewhere. And right, I don't care about those 2 minutes, but there are people that just don't like it. They need to have everyone in their perfect spec, in the most efficient spec that there is, and otherwise they're gonna get very nervous and anxious. And being 2 minutes earlier done with the raid is a good thing for them, so they can quicker log out again and not play for a week, I guess. Or I don't know. I don't know why that would matter, but there are certainly people that enjoy that way more, and that's also fine, don't get me wrong. I don't understand it, but that's the thing. If somebody likes different stuff, I don't care. Do whatever the hell you like. If you want to be you're done with the raid as quickly as possible, I too want to get through the raid as quickly as possible, but it's not going to make a difference if you have that one rat with you or not, realistically speaking. And everybody knows that, I think. And some people actually said they want to get over with it quick, disappear quickly again until the next raid day, where they're gonna log in 18:15 sharp, position their character, and they're gonna log in one time in that week and farm their consumables, position everything, so they need to spend the least amount of time in that game as possible. And look, that's also fine, right? You can do whatever the fuck you want. Just don't bother others with how they want to play games, I think. And that's the whole viability discussion here. And also for the people that do want to play something different that other people don't see as viable, you don't need to discuss with every idiot about how you're playing Moonkin and how that doesn't really work and all that kind of stuff. You don't need to argue with anybody that you're not going to convince that your spec is what you like to play, right? There's no point. And one more thing before we end this, I think that was also interesting. Jamie also said, I said, a couple of things. Basically, I said what I just said in the comments, and he said, it defeats the purpose of being this and that and not having basically a taunt as a tank and all that. Why even make a class if it's weak? No one is going to use it. This is one of the mistakes the devs have made. And people think it's some awesome thing that made the game hardcore. It wasn't. Right, exactly. You're saying it, but you're playing the game, so you can play whatever you want, right? If you want to play melee shaman, play melee shaman. You're gonna find a guild. Don't worry so much about it. And it's it's a mistake that devs made 13 years ago, because the time was different, right? They were not finished with some classes. I mean, if you were listening to Classic Cast or anything where some devs were, they even said, a couple of things. The pally got revamped, and in the end, we just didn't have time anymore. We forgot the taunt. Right, that's it. We forgot it. Basically, he said that, right? He said they had all of these things, and they wanted to have like an intervene of an ally and all that types of things, and it didn't work that way anymore because they revamped the class. Then it had to be released, and they kind of just lost track on that. And you know, it was a different time, and the things are in the game how they are right now, and there's no need to get upset about that the whole time anymore. At least I feel like after, you know, playing this a couple of months, even and years now, I'm over it, man. I know how things are. I know I'm gonna have a harder time as a Moonkin, but I know I can certainly, if I would play a Moonkin, I could probably go into the midfield pretty solid and provide a crit aura for all the fat DPS, and the DPS would love me, right? So that's what I know if I play the Moonkin. And if I enjoy that, then I'm just gonna go and play the Moonkin. And right now, you know, I'm pretty sure one last closing sentence for this topic, I think. I'm very sure that Blizzard was toying with the idea of tuning the numbers a little bit, you know. Just, I don't know, I'm on a Druid right now, so let's see, like a Wrath rank 8 here, I don't know, does 200, that's a bad example. Here, Starfire. Okay, Starfire does 525 arcane damage max to the target and has a damage coefficient of 100%. So sounds pretty good. Thing is, it's 3.5 second cast. I know you can tell that down, I think. But you know, they were probably toying with the idea of saying, hey, let's make the base damage of Starfire 600 tops. Right? Let's give Paladins a taunt. Sounds pretty reasonable to me, right? And people were very vocal about how they didn't want anything to change. And that's fine, right? It's just a lot of... Blizzard said, okay, then it seems like more people want nothing changed, because the thing is that everybody could bring in their small little changes that they want. If we just keep it, we know it's gonna be good, right? It's a safe bet thing, basically. And that's just how it is, right? I mean, they could have said, well, you know, that's they're getting a taunt now, and I mean, a little looking for group tool won't really hurt, right? And then they have that in, and I get both points, I get both sides, I understand, it doesn't really matter, you know, it's just how it is right now, and we don't need to get upset about it again and again and again and again. And I think, you know, you can very much so play, you have the choice to play whatever you like. Again, it's not like you're not going to clear a raid because you have that one guy in there that wants to play his spec. If he's absolutely terrible and he fucks up the raid, that's a whole different story, that's a whole different topic, right? It has nothing to do with class in the first place, right? But if you're not clearing a raid, then it's usually not that one red that is to blame, right? There's probably bigger issues there going on, and that's all I'm trying to say. So this has been a very long one, although we had only one topic. But yeah, that is basically what means viable to me. Viable means some things you can't really play. A Smite Priest, for example, for me is debatable if it's viable or not, because it definitely brings nothing to the table that you know, a disciplined healing priest doesn't. And so that's debatable. If we got any smiter priests here that have played it and tried it, let me know. I really want to hear that. But yeah, you know, it's basic things, and you can play whatever you like. It's just don't go on the sack of other people, and vice versa. Don't go on the sack of people that want to play something different in an RPG and they just want to enjoy the game the way they like it. You're not playing League of Legends, and these raids have been cleared 13 years ago, just as a reminder. There might be some sort of server first for every raid going on, and if you're into those kind of things, play a Fury Warrior and top the meters. Go ahead, no problem. You know, I would probably also do that with my main. I'm not sure, I don't know, because I'm a tank, and my alts are DPS, right, and healers, and but you know, you're not playing anything competitive. I'm sorry to inform you that the competitiveness in World of Warcraft Classic is not very developed as it is, and it's a little bit old. You're a little bit late to the party, and if you're into server first, that's certainly a minigame I can appreciate, but that's probably the only part of the game where you would say certain things aren't viable that are actually mediocre. right? Because by that definition, you wouldn't be able to take any hunters, except for the trank shot, right? And if you go by that definition, then you would say, all right, well then Prot Pally is viable. He brings a buff to the raid, and you know, a Holy Paladin could also get that buff, but then he's not a full maximized healer anymore. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of examples, pro and contra, and you know, it's whatever it is. You'll certainly understand what I mean. I think, you know, Moonkin brings an aura to the raid, Hunter brings an aura to the raid, and a trank shot, and then you would. I know there are skills that send we don't want more than 2 hunters, 3 at max, and they have to figure it out because they're just not that good. And you can absolutely do that. I don't understand why. If you have a 3rd hunter, that, you know, a guy that you like, you can either make him reroll, or you can just take him and still have fun and let him play whatever the hell he likes. But yeah, that's my opinion on viable stuff. I have I changed my sound setup as a closing sentence from up there, you know, very roomy mic, to down here. Let me know what you think. I'm gonna get a better pop filter too. But that's it's ordered. It just has to get here. I did like 4-hour research on pop filters, which is not necessary. You need either a nylon or a metal, and if you're getting a metal pop filter, get one that has these triangular things that directs the air coming from your mouth into the mic to the bottom, so it doesn't hit it. Not the round ones, that doesn't do anything, and it actually makes noise. And these nylon are the cheapest and the best if you compare it. You can also get a metal one for 50 bucks, 70 bucks, 100 bucks. Sure, but it will perform the same way as a €8 pop filter. I'm getting one for 20 bucks from K&M, also nylon, just a little bit more stable. I like that. And yeah, I just thought I should share my knowledge on pop filters here real quick, because I did a 4-hour research on that shit. So if you have questions regarding equipment, let me know. This has been Mosen for MTA 41. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.